Everyone talks about buying property in Dubai like it's some kind of cheat code for wealth, but nobody tells you what actually decides whether you walk away with a prime unit or with nothing at all. Because here's the uncomfortable truth most people discover too late. It's not about how much money you have, it's about when and how you enter the game. And that's exactly where most foreigners mess up, not because they're careless, but because the process looks simple on the surface while quietly punishing hesitation underneath. So before we talk about contracts, visas, or even prices, you need to understand the first invisible gate that separates winners from spectators. It starts long before launch day, before glossy brochures and influencer reels flood your screen, because by the time everyone is excited, the best units are already spoken for. This is where people panic when they hear the words expression of interest, because it sounds vague, risky, and unofficial, but that fear is exactly why it works. Because while most investors are waiting for certainty, the smart ones are quietly positioning themselves before certainty exists, and that single move changes everything that follows. Imagine a brand new project on Dubai Islands, something everyone will want the second it's announced. The developer has only 100 units, but the demand isn't 100 buyers, it's 300, maybe 500, all rushing in at the same time, all clicking refresh, all hoping they get lucky. On launch day, it's chaos, people get emotional, prices feel unfair, and many walk away empty handed, not because they couldn't afford it, but because they arrived at the same moment as everyone else. But then there's one investor who doesn't show up on launch day at all because they already arrived weeks earlier. That investor submitted an expression of interest, not to buy blindly, but to secure priority. And here's the part most people misunderstand. An expression of interest isn't a commitment, it's leverage. You put down a refundable amount, usually something like $10,000 or 2% of the unit value, and that money doesn't lock you in, it puts you in front. And because there's no real maximum, investors who understand the system use this strategically, because a stronger expression of interest often means a better position in the queue, sometimes even beating people who technically came earlier but committed less. And the risk everyone worries about, it's mostly imaginary. If you don't get the unit you want or you don't like what you're offered, your money comes back. Developers usually take a few weeks, sometimes a month, but the funds are refundable. So you're not gambling, you're reserving optionality. And this is why expressions of interest make sense in three specific moments: before a project launches, right after a launch when cancellations are likely, and even before a project is officially announced, especially with developers who release everything at once to the public. But submitting an expression of interest only buys you a seat at the table, not the meal. The real tension begins on allocation day because this is where theory meets reality. Developers handle this differently, and that difference matters more than most buyers realize. Some release a long list of available units and let investors choose. Others run lotteries. Some simply assign you one or two options and ask you to decide fast. And in every single one of these scenarios, there's an uncomfortable hierarchy that nobody likes to talk about. Bigger investors go first, always. Bulk buyers can take 20, 30, sometimes 40 units in one move. And when that happens, the inventory for regular buyers shrinks instantly. That's why timing is everything. Because if you're late, you're not choosing from the best units, you're choosing from what survived. And yet here's the twist most people miss. A unit not taken on launch day isn't automatically a bad unit. Sometimes it was reserved and then cancelled. Sometimes the project wasn't hyped, even though the fundamentals are strong. And those quiet projects, the ones nobody is screaming about, often hide the best opportunities. Once you secure a unit, momentum becomes your best friend, because the next phase isn't about excitement, it's about negotiation. And this is where foreigners often assume Dubai is rigid, fixed, and non-negotiable, when in reality, flexibility exists if you know where to apply pressure. Price is one lever, but it's not the only one. Developers care about cash flow, certainty, and scale, so if you can offer any of those, you suddenly have a conversation instead of a price tag. Sometimes it's as simple as asking. Smaller developers with low demand inventory might give you 2 or 3% off without resistance. Medium-sized developers selling higher value units might go 5%, especially if the project isn't brand new. Pay more upfront, buy multiple units, or move fast when others hesitate, and the numbers start to shift. And when developers don't want to touch the price, they often adjust something else, like covering the Dubai Land Department fee, which is 4% of the property value and paid to the government. That single concession can quietly save you tens of thousands. And if price and fees are locked, payment plans become the battlefield. A 70-30 structure can turn into 60-40, or payments can be pushed later, easing your first year's burden. But this is where demand flips the power dynamic again. Because if you're chasing a highly demanded project, pushing too hard can cost you the unit entirely. And losing a strong unit over a small incentive is one of the most expensive mistakes buyers make. Once terms are agreed, everything becomes real with one document, the booking form. It's short, deceptively simple, but powerful. It locks in the unit, the price, and the payment schedule, and the moment you sign it, your expression of interest usually stops being refundable. That's the line you cross where curiosity turns into commitment, and soon after, you'll be asked to pay the booking amount, sometimes minimal, sometimes up to 10%, depending on the developer. Then comes the down payment, typically 20%, and the 4% DLD fee. Ideally, you'd pay into an escrow account, but early in launches, that account often isn't ready yet, so payments go to the developer directly, which sounds scary until you realize it's standard practice with reputable developers. This is also when you start realizing that the process isn't just about buying property, it's about navigating timing, trust, and patience. Because after all of this, after the money, the forms, and the signatures, there's a pause. You wait. And during that wait, something important happens that most buyers don't anticipate, something that quietly determines how flexible, profitable, and powerful your position will be going forward. That moment doesn't come with fireworks, but when it arrives, it changes what you're allowed to do next. And that's where this story really starts to shift. If you're serious about buying property in Dubai and don't want to learn these lessons the expensive way, reach out to our team now. Message us on WhatsApp or click the link in the description, and we'll walk you through the exact strategy that fits your budget, your goals, and your timeline.